This is guide 1 of my new project, tbcguides.gg. No clickbait titles, no ridiculous thumbnails, just high quality, really simple to use TBC guides without the BS and fluff. And if you believe in this project and you like what I'm doing, then you can help support us on the Patreon. It's linked below, and you can join guys such as Jesse Rubenstein, who's helping to support this dream of mine to create high quality World of Warcraft guides without the fluff, without the BS, and say screw the YouTube algorithm. I'm just going to make exactly what I think is going to be simple and easy for you guys without the clickbait. So thank you. Alright, so this is TBC Pre-patch for Dummies. For people who haven't used one of my guides before, all my guides are linked in the description below. So everything we're going to cover right now is on my website at tbcguides.gg in simple, easy to use format with drop-down menus and all of that sort of good stuff. So yeah, if you want to reference this in the future, you can just find all the guides on tbcguides.gg, and it's linked in the description below. Alright, so pre-patch. First things first, it's only 2 weeks long, guys, so don't freak out. Everyone chill. You don't need to go crazy min-max. You don't need to have like the perfect min-max gearing or anything. The focus of pre-patch is going to be 2 things. 1, you're going to be raiding current content with the new talents and changes and getting used to them. And 2, you're going to prepare your character for TBC. Okay, so I'll run you through the new changes and then we'll tell you how you can prepare your character appropriately. Okay, so raiding in pre-patch. So again, this is only for 2 weeks. So I really need to stress that your raid will not care if you do 5% more or less damage or healing in the final Necroramus of Classic. So don't overly stress on min-maxing your gear and talents. This is just for pre-patch. Everything's going to change again for 2 weeks. So this is just going to try to get you used to these changes and then on to TBC. Okay, so let's cover pre-patch consumables. Now, pre-patch consumables changes the entire previous system we've been using. So you can see here in the past, for someone like a melee, you'd be using food buff, Scorpok buff, AP buff, agility buff, strength buff. You'd be stacking all these different things together. Well, pre-patch brings in a TB system that completely changes everything. So now, instead of those buffs, everything is kind of slotted into either Battle Elixir for your offensive stat buffs, Guardian Elixir for your defensive stat buffs, or your food buff. And that's all your standard consumables that you were buffing yourself with in the past. Now, this doesn't include anything utility-like, such as lit potions, free action potions, things like that. And it also doesn't include these next 2 things, which are scrolls. So for some reason, they left scrolls in their own category. So you can stack scroll of agility, scroll of strength, whatever. Any of these scrolls stacked with everything else on top of your normal battle, guardian, and food buff. Now, as well as that, Valentine's Day gift buffs also stack with everything. Not just the gift buffs that you get from combining the presents, but the chocolate boxes also stack with everything. So both of those stack with everything. I've tested it, I went on PTR, and it even stacks with the scroll buffs. So yeah, stacks with everything. Now, before we go on, you may be asking, what about flasks? Well, flasks still exists, but now they count as both a battle and a guardian elixir. So your flask of the Titans, your flask of supreme power, those count as both slots of your battle and guardian elixir. So in a lot of cases, you're actually not going to use your flask if you're a melee. A lot of casters do still use the Flask of Supreme Power though, just because it offers the most spell power possible in those 2 consumes. Now, as well as that, you'll notice that the Flask of the Titans here, the HP has been reduced, so all the flasks have basically been nerfed as well. So they're not quite as good as they were before. Now again, I did say scrolls stack with everything, so the problem with these scrolls is that they don't have a reliable way to be farmed. They just will drop items. So the only way, if you're a super sweaty hardcore player, to get these is you're gonna have to buy them off auction house. So good luck, and if you want to do them, that's where you're gonna have to go probably. Now, there are some vendors in the world that sometimes sell scrolls, but they're just not a very reliable source. Auction house is pretty much going to be your go-to if you want any sort of reliability with picking these up. Now, Valentine's Day buffs are interesting because they changed the duration of them. So in the past, you could log out with your Valentine's Day buffs on and out, and it wouldn't count down the duration. But once pre-patch hits, it starts counting down in real time. So this basically means that in 10 days real time, your box of chocolates on that alt is going to go bye-bye. Now, there is a way you can extend the time on your Valentine's Day chocolates, and that is because if you open this box of chocolates here at the end of the 10 days before it expires, you get another 10 days from the chocolates inside of them. So it's 10 days on the box of chocolates item and then the 10 days on the chocolates inside. So a total of 20 days you can basically get before all your Valentine's Day things expire for good. Now, we have some important changes to cover for a few of the utility potions that you do use on raids. Lip potions in particular no longer make you immune to physical attacks. So now instead of that, they reduce physical damage taken, which is not nearly as good as the old lip potion. Protection potions as well have been changed and nerfed, so they only last for 2 minutes now, which basically means that you can't stack a whole bunch of them on top of each other anymore, because each only lasts 2 minutes. So it will expire at the same time that your cooldown is ready to pop another one. Juju Chill as well is relevant because a lot of you guys will still be killing Saffron over this next 2 weeks, and Juju Chill is now a Guardian Elixir. So for example, if you have a Stamina Zanza, which happens to also count as a Guardian Elixir, you cannot use Juju Chill on top of that anymore. Okay, now for people that are lazy, I have made a quick reference BIS consumable list, which just lists your battle, your guardian, and your food buff in one handy chart here. For example, let's say you are a mage and you want to look at your battle and guardian BIS, then I've already done it for you. I went to all the class discords and found out the information. Your battle and guardian elixirs will be Flask of Supreme Power, and your food will be Night Fin Soup or Run Tum Tuber Surprise. So I basically just went through each of the class discords and found the information and gathered it together for you guys. So you can use this handy drop down menu here to know what battle and guardian elixirs you need to use. Now on top of that, I went to the class discords and got the talents. Now this was actually a pain in the butt to get because for some reason a lot of class discords don't sticky these things, but pre-patch talents will change the talents that you want to use. Now again, this is for a short 2 weeks, so I wouldn't stress over having the perfect talents. There's going to be times when you might want to change how you're doing the talents just for fun, or you want to test things out. This is the 2-week pre-patch period where things don't really matter that much because people aren't going to be so stressed if you're not doing perfect min-maxing during pre-patch. So I did go through all the class discords and find basic talents that you can use in pre-patch that are recommended. So obviously there's going to be some variations depending on the class, depending on the person, but these are just good starter cookie cutter specs. So for example, for Shadow Priest, you can see here we have the Shadow Priest talents, then we have Healing Priest talents. Same goes for example, Rogues. You got your Combat Swords, you got your Combat Daggers, you got your Mutilate. So I went through all the class discords and got that information for you. And by the way, if you are a Rogue, stick around for the end of this video. There's a whole section I'm doing just for my Rogue buddies because I am a Rogue main, so there's an extra section I'm doing for Rogues in pre-patch to cover even more things you need to know as a Rogue. Okay, now let's talk preparing your character for TBC during the pre-patch. So during this short 2 weeks, you will want to be preparing 2 things. One is most people are going to be farming honor and marks for gear. And 2, they're going to be prepping trade skills. Now, of course, there's going to be the leveling. If you have a new character, you're going to be leveling them during the pre-patch, etc, etc. But these are the 2 things that you'll be doing on top of any leveling if you have a new character that you're creating. So firstly, let's cover the pre-patch honor farm. Why people are going to be farming honor in the pre-patch is because you can buy rank 14 PvP gear for honor. So once the pre-patch hits, you can trade honor and BG marks in exchange for rank 14 PvP gear. Now, this rank 14 gear in particular is really good if you want to fill in mixing pieces on new tunes, on old tunes. If you have a brand new paladin, for example, is one of the best ways to get a brand new paladin completely geared up. If you're someone that's swapping specs for TBC and you don't have a weapon for that spec, it's a really good way to find a weapon. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of people grinding that pre-patch honor. Now, On top of that, there's something a lot of people don't realize is that you can store 75,000 honor and 100 of each BG mark going into TBC. So even if you don't care about rank 14 PvP gear, let's say you're full BIS, you have all the weapons that you want, you don't care about that, you can still grind BGs and bring that honor and BG marks into TBC. Now you might want to do this because in TBC there's going to be items that you can buy at level 70. So for example, as a rogue, once you hit 70, you can buy the blue PvP honor gloves for 12,622 honor and 20 Alterac Valley marks. So this will help people that are really itching to jump into PvP straight away at level 70, and they want to have that 75k honor and all those marks saved up so that they can just buy all the pieces that they want and get that early PvP advantage. So in these two charts here, I have firstly the rank 14 PvP gear cost, so a quick reference guide for you guys if you want to know how much honor and marks you need for each piece. In total, if you want to get all of the armor, a full set, it will cost you 65,000 over honor points, 70 Arathi Basin marks, 50 AV marks, and 30 Warsong Gouge marks, and that's just for the armor alone. So if you're someone like a prot paladin trying to gear up with a lot of PvP rank 14 gear, you've got a lot of grinding ahead of you. You probably want to find a good PvP queuing group. Now, next thing I have is, as you saw before, I have the list of all the level 70 honor gear costs, from jewelry to trinkets to armor pieces to the weapons as well. So that's all handy on this page that's linked in the description below. Now next, you'll be prepping trade skills. So besides the trade skills that already exist, which you guys know about, like blacksmithing, leatherworking, for example, that people are prepping and making sure that they're leveled at 300 and ready to go, jewel crafting is also coming in for pre-patch. So for pre-patch, what you need to do is you need to go to Exoda or Silver Moon and learn jewel crafting from the new trainers if you are one of the classes or one of the people that want to learn jewel crafting. So you can level up to 300 jewel crafting before TBC starts if you want to. So I won't cover the exact mats here because there's 1,000 guides for that already, and I've even linked one here for you guys. But the nice thing about jewel crafting is that, one, if you are on a populated server, people will already be selling jewel crafting leveling kits. I've seen a lot of people selling them, so you can buy a whole pre-made kit from someone else who's got all the ingredients for you. Or if you want a raw cost, buy it from the auction house. I did have a look at the time when I made this video. It's anywhere from 300 to 500 gold depending on the gem prices on your server, if you want to just go to auction house and buy all the mats once it comes back up. But just be aware that the higher end gems like the huge emeralds, the blue sapphires, the Azerodian diamonds, those get really expensive, and there's not a huge amount of supply of those if people aren't actively killing the higher level mobs. So just be aware that those prices may increase if too many of them get bought out from the auction house. Now, as well as that, you should be aware of prospecting if you're taking jewel crafting. So prospecting is an interesting one because if you have a lot of thorium ore, you can actually prospect that and turn that into chances at the gems that you need as well. So if you see cheap thorium ore for sale, this is a good potential way to be looking at getting gems as well, and you can actually even make money from them. Okay, so again, if you need the talents, the PvP costs and things, all of these with the consumable list above is all on the website link below. But let's cover the rogue stuff for my rogue viewers now. So here are 5 things that I would want to pass on to rogues going into pre-patch. So one is that combat swords, combat daggers, and combat mutilates are your 3 specs going into pre-patch. There is a 5% drop in between each. So from combat swords to combat daggers is about 5% DPS decrease. From combat daggers to mutilate is another 5% decrease. But I will say that this honestly doesn't really matter. Again, this is pre-patch. There's not going to be a raid leader that's saying, oh, it's the last raid of next Rammers, you better perform, you better bring your best min-max sweaty performance. No, this is pre-patch. People are going to be playing around with talents. It's okay. Even if your mutilate spec, which is 10% less DPS than a top combat spec, you can still perform very well in raids. So it's not meme level. It's not as good as combat swords, for example, but it's not complete meme level. You can still perform decently if you keep good uptime, you have good rotations, all of that is still fine. What I would stress is that don't feel pressured to swap to swords just for pre-patch, because no one's really focusing on passes and all of that when we're prepping for TBC. This isn't the time for passing, this is the time for having fun and trying out new talents. Now the next thing is there is a rogue DPS chart on this guide. So usually you guys know that I do a weapon comparison list for each phase. I have like a nice big long chart list with all the different weapon combinations and things, but because pre-patch is so short, it's literally only 2 weeks, it felt like a waste to do that. So instead, I'm just going to post the rough comparison of weapon combinations that Simon and I has made from the Rogue Discord. So shout out to him for making this and taking the time to do that. He's a good guy. And this lists the rough DPS values. So you can see obviously Gressil, Hungry and Cold is at the top, but like look at this, King's Fall with a Harbinger of Doom. It's still not horrendous. It's still 2078. Obviously, it's not as good as swords, but again, you can make up these DPS differences just through good play. For example, I have a rogue that I was raiding with for all of Classic. He's been one of my guildies. He was using a Viscag because he has the worst loot luck possible. He's been using Viscag main hand even in phase 6 next Rammus. And he was keeping up in DPS with the rest of the rogues just fine. So just performance wise, don't feel pressured again to swap to something else. Again, this is pre-patch. I wouldn't stress if you're not having the perfect BIS weapon combination for that. It's all gone in 2 weeks anyway. And side note guys, thank you that Death Sting sucks now and it's worse than Harbinger of Doom, because that never dropped for me in all of Classic. So praise Jesus, Harbinger of Doom is better than Death Sting at last. So the one thing to note here guys is that weapon speed is really important. So you notice that the faster weapons in the offhand here do perform better. Look, Claw of the Frostworm in particular, look at how high it jumps up on the list just because it's a very fast offhand. So because of the new combat potency talent that procs energy from your offhand hits, it's showing that all fast weapons are going up in value by a lot. Now the next thing you need to know as a rogue is that weapon skill is gone. So look at this, expertise has replaced the weapon skill on ACLG and any other weapon skill items. So unfortunately weapon skill is way more powerful than expertise, but expertise is still a good stat. If you want a rough estimate of value, one expertise rating is equal to about 2.5 to 3 attack power. So now with this in mind, old items like this ACLG, you might not want to wear them anymore because you're not getting that weapon skill and you're sacrificing so many stats by wearing a phase 1 item in phase 6, for example. So you can kind of stop wearing all of these really old school items from earlier phases that used to have weapon skill because now they have expertise, which isn't quite as valuable. But yeah, expertise is a good stat still, it's just not weapon skill. Okay, now the next thing you want to know is that deadly poison is good now. So the debuff cap is raised in pre-patch, which means you can finally go use deadly poison in your offhand. Now instant poison will still have a use. Instant poison is still used for short fights such as trash and dungeon grinds where the mob's gonna die before a deadly poison would be able to tick properly. So you still use instant poison in your offhand when you're killing things fast, but now on the longer fights you can put deadly poison in your offhand instead, and that will perform better on those longer fights. One thing to note is don't forget that we all have Wind Fury now. If you have a Shaman on Alliance, everyone's got Wind Fury now once the Shamans start rolling in, so don't put anything on your main hand. Wind Fury does beat poisons and everything else in the main hand on average. Now next question you may have as a rogue is Rupture. Is it better? It is better, but it's still not something you're going to use much until TBC. So there's a few reasons why you're not really going to use Rupture, and that is because one, vanilla mobs have less armor versus TBC mobs. So Rupture doesn't gain the same value because it's not bypassing as much armor in vanilla right now because there's a lot less armor on these mobs to bypass. The second reason is that Rupture relies a lot on Druid ability Mangle to get a boost of damage, and you may not necessarily have a Druid doing Mangle on the raid just yet, depending on what you're doing. And the third reason is that the debuff cap can still be reached in 40-man raids versus a 10 or 25-man raid in TBC. So for all of these reasons, rupture doesn't quite present the value that you'll be getting when we actually roll into TBC. So I actually still recommend you keep using eviscerate over rupture until after the pre-patch. Alright, now finally, I do have a Patreon bonus. If you check the link in the description and your Patreon on this page on the website, there will be an extra video here just going over my personal pre-patch plans and what I'd recommend for other fellow rogues if you were curious at what I would personally tell you to do if you were in my circumstances. Alright, so patrons can check out that video. It's on the guide on tbcguides.gg at the pre-patch section. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this guide. Again, thank you to all the people that support on Patreon. It does mean a lot that I'm slowly going to be able to make guides that I actually care about, that don't rely on clickbait and BS fluff and aren't just this confusing mess. It's one thing I really noticed with TBC guides on YouTube is that it's a mess with so much clickbait, misinformation, and just really long, confusing videos. So hopefully I will want to change that, and hopefully the Patreon is the first step in me being able to do that and stop caring about the YouTube algorithm. So thank you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.